Good evening, everyone. Today we're diving into something that's as universal as it is complex: human connection. Specifically, we're going to talk about a pattern many of us have either experienced or seen in others. Why people with avoidant attachment tendencies often feel an almost magnetic pull toward you after a period of no contact. When someone has an avoidant attachment style, their behavior often looks like indifference or detachment or more detachment or but here's the reality. It's rarely about a lack of care. In fact, avoidants often feel just as deeply as anyone else. They simply fear what that vulnerability might cost them. At the heart of this fear is a deep-seated belief that intimacy equals risk. Risk of rejection, risk of judgment, or risk of being seen in their raw, imperfect humanity. To avoidants, love can feel like standing on the edge of a cliff, unsure if the person they care about will catch them or let them fall. So, what do? They build walls. They keep people at arm's length because staying distant feels safer than the emotional exposure of closeness. They may seem aloof or overly independent, but underneath is a person grappling with the fear of being hurt. Why no contact triggers their return? When there's no contact, it disrupts their usual cycle of avoiding vulnerability. The absence removes the immediate threat of closeness, but also takes away the safety net of knowing someone is there for them. Over time, this creates a vacuum, a space where their suppressed feelings start to rise to the surface. They began to notice the care, attention, and presence they took for granted. In their solitude, they realized that pushing someone away didn't erase the connection or the feelings they had. Instead, it made those feelings harder to ignore. Compassion for the avoidant. It's easy to feel frustrated or hurt by avoidant behavior, and that's valid. But understanding that avoidance is rooted in fear, not a lack of love, can bring compassion to the situation. When someone pulls away, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't care. It often means they care so much that they're afraid to show it. And here's the truth. Vulnerability is a skill, not an instinct. For avoidance, it takes time, patience, and often the right kind of partnership to learn that intimacy isn't a cliff, but a bridge, one they can cross safely without losing themselves. When you recognize this, you can stop taking their avoidance personally. Instead, you can focus on maintaining your own boundaries while giving them the space to navigate their fear on their own terms. That's where true growth begins, when someone pulls away or when you intentionally step back. It creates a silence that speaks volumes. For avoidants, who are often so focused on protecting themselves from the vulnerability of closeness, absence becomes a mirror. It reflects back not only their feelings, but also the dynamics of the relationship they were trying to avoid confronting. Absence as a catalyst for reflection. In the day-to-day push and pull of a relationship, it's easy for avoidants to focus on the perceived pressures of intimacy, the expectations, the emotional demands, and the fear of losing their independence. But when there's no contact, those distractions fade away. Instead, they are left with stillness, a space where they can no longer avoid their thoughts or emotions. In that silence, they begin to feel the weight of what was lost. It's not that they didn't value the connection before, it's that they were too preoccupied with protecting themselves to see it clearly. This absence becomes a mirror reflecting the value of the connection and the ways they may have taken it for granted. It forces them to confront questions they'd been avoiding. Why do I feel unsettled without this person? What was I afraid of when we were close? Why do I miss them now that they're gone? Romanticizing the past. One interesting aspect of this process is how avoidants often begin to idealize the relationship during no contact. With distance, they no longer feel the pressure of vulnerability or perceived conflict. Instead, they focus on the positive moments, the warmth, the support, and the stability the other person provided. This idealization isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's part of the process of realizing what they truly value. However, it can also lead to a renewed sense of longing that feels almost obsessive as they replay memories and emotions in their mind. What this means for you. When an avoidant person starts to feel this pull during no contact, it's a sign that they're grappling with their deeper emotions. But here's the critical part. The reflection that absence creates is not about you fixing them or rushing to reestablish connection. It's about allowing them to sit with those feelings and decide how or if they want to move forward. In a healthy relationship, both people need to recognize their patterns and take responsibility for their growth. For avoidance, the mirror of absence is often the first step toward understanding themselves and the role fear plays in their relationships. Turning the mirror on yourself. And let's not forget, absence creates a mirror for you too. It's a chance to reflect on what you need, what you deserve, and how you want to show up in relationships. Because at the end of the day, a relationship isn't just about how much someone misses you when you're gone. It's about how they choose to show up when you're present. When we hear the word boundaries, many of us think of rigid lines or walls designed to keep others out. But true boundaries are far more nuanced. They are not walls, but invitations. They are a way of saying, this is where I stand. If you want to be here, meet me with respect and care. And here's the magic. When we set healthy boundaries, especially in relationships with avoidant individuals, they often find those boundaries deeply compelling. The power of boundaries in relationships. Boundaries are a reflection of self-worth. They signal to others and to ourselves that we know who we are, what we need, and what we won't tolerate. For avoidant individuals who may fear being overwhelmed or losing their independence in relationships, boundaries can feel like a safe harbor. Instead of perceiving closeness as a threat, your clear and consistent boundaries communicate, I am here, but I don't need to chase you. I respect myself, and I will respect your space too. Love and connection don't require losing oneself. They require balance. This balance is often what avoidants crave but struggle to articulate. They feel safe with someone who honors their own limits because it reassures them that the relationship won't demand more than they can give. Why boundaries attract avoidance? They create space for reflection. When you set boundaries, especially during no contact, you give the avoidant person time and space to process their feelings without pressure. This space can allow them to recognize the value of the relationship without feeling trapped. They signal confidence. Confidence is magnetic, and boundaries are a direct expression of self-confidence. When you hold firm to your needs and values, you demonstrate that your worth isn't tied to someone else's behavior. For avoidants who often fear engulfment or dependency, this independence is incredibly appealing. They challenge the push-pull dynamic. Avoidants are used to the cycle of emotional push and pull. When you set boundaries, you disrupt that pattern. Instead of chasing after them when they withdraw, you stand firm, creating a dynamic that feels different and intriguing. The difference between walls and boundaries. It's important to distinguish between boundaries and walls. Boundaries say, I value myself in you. Walls say, I'm shutting you out. Boundaries invite connection with conditions, respect, trust, and mutual care. Walls, on the other hand, block connection altogether. For avoidants who are already prone to distancing themselves, walls reinforce their fears, while boundaries create a path to healthier interaction. The magnetism of self-respect. When you honor your boundaries, you show others how to treat you. This isn't about playing hard to get or manipulation. It's about authenticity. The energy of self-respect draws people in because it feels solid, stable, and trustworthy. For avoidants who often struggle with trust and stability, this kind of energy is both rare and reassuring. What boundaries teach us about love. Healthy relationships aren't about merging into one another. They're about two individuals choosing to stand side by side. Boundaries make that possible. They allow us to love without losing ourselves and to respect others without overextending. For avoidance, boundaries can be the key to overcoming their fears of closeness. And for you, they can be the key to ensuring that any relationship you enter is built on mutual respect, not compromise of self. That's the kind of love that lasts and the kind of connection that grows stronger with time. Let me leave you with this. Relationships are never about perfection. They're about patterns. The dance between closeness and distance, between connection and space, teaches us about ourselves and the people we care for. For avoidance, the pull they feel after no contact isn't just about missing you. It's about seeing the relationship and themselves in a new light. And for you, it's an opportunity to reflect on your boundaries, your worth, and what you truly need from a connection. So whether the story continues with them or not, remember this. You are not responsible for fixing someone else's fears, but you are responsible for honoring your own needs. And so when you stand firm in your boundaries, you create a space where love can thrive. Not through chasing or compromising, but through mutual respect and understanding. That's where real connection begins. Thank you.